Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to Anime King, and today I'm going to be giving you part 16 of What If Naruto Was a Hope of the Uchiha clan. Remember to get this one to 100 like as usual, share this to all of your friends in your social media platform, and also guys, go ahead and check out the brand new episode over in Anime King 3 of What If Naruto Was Neglected with Jashin sealed inside. If you men enjoyed that guys. And over in Anime King 2, I post a brand new episode of What If Naruto Was the legendary Uchiha X Namikaze. So go ahead and check out that guys. Remember for new to go ahead and click that red subscribe button and become part of the Anime King family. And thank you for all for helping and support. And yeah, without further ado, would you say begin this new episode? Start the intro. So the last time we left off, things weren't so good between Naruto and Tsunade, as she was doing everything out of her way to make sure that he knew that she wasn't pleased with him because of the path that he took. Despite him trying to just protect the ones that he loved, well, she was angry, and she was letting her anger cloud her judgment. As Naruto arrived to see an Uzumaki, with many other Uzumaki guards, he was, well, surprised by this, concerned that he extended a hand towards Uzumaki's, but they turned it down, so that was rather surprising of them being here. He met the young girl that was there, a rather defiant young girl. Her name was Kushina. She was a daughter of Nagato. As Naruto was able to speak to Mito, as she told him that they need aid from them, they were asking him for aid. The things that they talk about, many things that she told him was the things that Naruto saw in his dreams. Mito said that the warriors that were attacking them were their own people that were dead. They didn't have any pain tolerance, nothing. They just attacked without any mercy. They didn't want anything, no land, nothing. They just want to slaughter them. And they saw a few of the people guiding them, strange members with white eyes and white hair. As Kurama heard the sigil, he was frightened. Kaguya, he said. He informed Naruto why the sage wanted him to watch over the Uchiha, because Indra almost rose Kaguya back from her ceiling. So he was there to make sure that none of that ever happened again. So Naruto decided to take the company and march towards Ozu, as Mito was very thankful because of that. So with that, Tsunade and the others split apart. Even in their final moments for now, she was still angry. She let her anger cloud her judgment despite her wanting to say something. As he made his way off, Tsunade had a dream that something bad was coming, and she was supposed to help him because if he did not stand his grounds with her, everything will fall. As she woke up sweating, she had Kushina with her. As the girl was staying with her, as she was watching over her, the army was coming though, as they had to move out. Hoshirama created 100 clone of himself, as Kurama was there as well. Hoshirama performed his jutsu that annihilated the army by capturing them in his old style. Mifune and the others quickly realized that they stood no chance. As they spoke to Hanzo, Tsunade told them that he just wanted to unite them all. After realizing there was no hope, and believing that this might indeed bring some change, Hanzo decided to give up as he joined the forces. For the past few months he hasn't heard anything from the mountain forces. Something was wrong, so they were going to go up there. Meanwhile in the ship, as Naruto and the others were making their way, he almost gave in to temptation, but Neri snapped him out of it, as she told him that anything that was happening between him and Tsunade, they can work it out. But don't do anything that would change her thought of him permanently. As he apologized and thanked her, they arrived towards Ozu, as Ayato couldn't believe it. Nagato couldn't believe it. As they saw the king coming with his men, they couldn't believe they were actually here to help them. As Nagato was happy as he actually hugged Naruto. Naruto was surprised by the affection, but the leader decided to bow to him. As the man told him that he apologized for turning down the past actions, and the Uzumakis will fall under the new regime, as he was more than grateful for their help. So yeah guys, that was basically as we left off. You guys can switch across the place, check it out for yourself. So what do you say begin this new episode? Naruto alongside his friends were currently standing around the large table, looking at the detailed map of the islands of Uzu. He was already briefed about the loss of the Uzumakis, and Nagato gave him detail about the enemy, as the story matched up same to what Mito told him. When asked about any corpses that the Uzumaki might capture to discover the enemy's secrets, he was disappointed. Not even one corpse were captured. It was not if the Uzumakis hadn't tried hard, but every prisoner that they grabbed disintegrated into ashes because of some strange seal on their body. Seals that not even the Uzumakis were fast enough to stop. And that was rather shocking given the fact that they were the fastest in that art. In light of the new discovery and Shisui's recommendation, Naruto ordered the evacuation of the non-fighters from the main island and from Hiroshima. At first, Ayato didn't believe that only their shinobis can stop the enemy, but Naruto gave him a stern clear. Risking these non-fighters' life would be a waste. Not to mention it would take at least 2 to 3 weeks for him to evacuate every single non-fighting Uzumaki. And that was not even taking in the ninjas, fighters, and the civilian fighters. If the enemy could not be stopped, it was best if they begin the evacuation now, or risk also being decimated down to the last man if they fail. Send your 2,000 soldiers to protect Uzu from where the evacuation shall be carried out. The rest of our forces shall hold the enemy here, said Naruto. Is it wise sending so many capable fighters to defend Uzu? My king, we have a few good men in our home and solid barriers to protect the island. We need every fighter here to repel the enemy, said Nagato. Enough of our people have already died, brother. We need to save as many as we can, Mito said, with a pleading look. In the end, Nagato agreed. It is no use hiding behind walls that are barely standing. We must make our 13,000 ninjas face the enemy in open field, said Kagami. We tried that before and they overwhelmed us with sheer numbers, said Ayato. Forgive me, my lord. Your people are brave fighters, but they lack discipline. Our 7,000 ninjas are the elite warriors of our land. It would be best if your people act as their support. It might just help us to hold the enemy, said Neri. She's right, Lord Ayato. Your troops are weary from battle. Ours are fresh and ready to fight. We also have good officers to lead this army. I urge you to follow this plan, said Inuma. Very well, Ayato said. It was not really like he had a choice, as he saw the look from the king that was daring him to disobey. The young boy surely had some iron in his veins. As Naruto surprised them, as he was going to be standing at the front, he told them, as he gave her the orders, they tried to dissuade him from taking such a risk by being at the front lines. But they could not change his mind. The battle for Hiroshima was about to begin. Time skip. Contrary to his expectations, for the next 3 days, Naruto did not see a single trace of the enemy. He sent out patrol parties, but there was not even a sign of the enemy. It was likely vanished, but that could not be the case given their numbers. But he gave the ninjas and those Uzumakis to familiarize themselves with the battle plan and each other. Morale was high when they discovered that he would be standing at the front as well. That boosted morale even more. On the 4th night, the moment that they were all dreading finally arrived, King Naruto stood outside the walls of Hiroshima, along with an army of 13,000 ninja watching the solo volcano of the island erupt violently. The already darkened night was filled with ashes all over and dust. While the lava will never reach the city, thanks to the barriers erupted by the Uzumaki centuries ago, it wouldn't be enough to stop the enemy that came out of the volcano. Now we know why our scouts never found any trace of the enemy. Neri watched as several caves emerged from the bottom of the volcano. The erupting lava changed direction as a wave of darkness erupted from the caves. The ground trembled violently as thousands upon thousands of human-like creatures walked out of the volcano caves. Whoever these people were once upon a time, they were now lost. Their skin was charred black, their eyes just as demonic, without an ounce of soul left inside of them. Strange seals were all over their body, and they were armed to the teeth. What disturbed Naruto and his forces were the children amongst the army. Many of them What is this? Said Inuma. The March of Dead, said Nagato grimly. Many of these dead still had the armor of Kaguya's, Uzumaki's, Hagromo's, and unknown clans. But they didn't saw it. Now we know what happened to the mountain clans. From a land of lightning, said Itachi. They're all dead. How many of them are there? Said Takashi. 50,000 at least. The king's guard flinched as he heard Ayato told them the number of the enemy force. The more disturbing fact was, more of them were coming. Ayato's estimate was dropping. That was more than 50,000. They watched as the army of dead was stopped by the barrier. Hundreds are burned alive as they tried to get through, but they failed. But they attack again and again and again. As their bodies broke apart, they attack, not caring about their life. Until the barrier started to waver, screams and roar spread across the entire land. Many men and women started to tremble in fear. The desire to flee rose in many of their hearts. As they watched the barriers start to fail one after another, despair started to spread across their heart until the king came across them on a horse. Stand, said Naruto, as his voice resonated across the entire area. Warriors of Uzu, warriors of fire, my ninja. Fear had struck Naruto's own heart, but this madness had to stop right here, unless the entire world would be burned. I will not say that I'm not afraid, neither are you. Yet we all swore to protect the realm of the man, to protect our people, our lands, our homes. Nagato saw the morale in many of his people snap back, despite the barriers falling. Against foes, against God, against death. As Naruto pulled down and raised up in the sky, as the barriers are finally destroyed, the enemy came charging. Fight, Naruto shouted, dwarfing their roars. Ninjas of the world, the sound of 13,000 swords being unleashed. As Naruto watched hundreds of enemies be consumed by various traps set by his own forces, they were ripped apart, blown to pieces, and yet they still kept on coming not to care for their life. Never before had he ever seen anything like this, so inhuman, so out of this world. His Sharingan came to life. There was around 55,000 of them charging towards them. Each and every trap that was laid was overwhelmed by the sheer numbers as they run over their own allies' body. Not caring for their friends at all. They were mindless, so it didn't make any sense. As Naruto turned towards his ninjas as they got closer. Burn them, he said. The entire front army, along with Naruto himself, flashed show hand signs. Fire style. Field of fire. A raging inferno was thousands of fireball jutsus were released. As they came in like a tsunami moving forward, they washed over the enemy, turning them into dust. As the tsunami finally died down, Naruto saw another massive wave of the undead. As he raised his hand for the other army to switch. Water style. As the new front line spewed the water, raging dragons. Hundreds of monster water dragons were created as they charged towards the enemy forces. Hundreds, thousands of enemy forces were consumed. Still, they kept on coming. Give them a volley. 13,000 shurikens and kunais were unleashed with explosive tags, blowing apart the enemy. Nagato and his Uzumaki clan members watched the one-sided slaughter that was created by the king. Every ninja of the king obeyed his command and was fighting with such discipline that the Uzumaki couldn't even dream of. They had tried to overwhelm their enemy with sheer force, and they suffered so many losses. But for the first time, the army of dead was not only being stopped, but they were being destroyed by the thousands. The enemy army had massive amount of numbers, but what they lacked was the ability to perform jutsus, and that which they were paying the price in thousands. Earth, Naruto shouted out. A group of fresh Shirtobi warriors stepped forward, who replaced the water ninjas. As they were encouraged, as Naruto did the same thing as he went through hand sign, Earth style, Earth spike. Hundreds were impaled as Shizu would finish his style, just as Itachi did on the other side. Wind style, wave of depth, lightning release, electric magnetic murder. The carnage of wind and lightning tore through the enemy. They were being killed by the dozen in seconds. But despite losing more than 20,000 forces in that massacre, the enemy just would not stop. They were now a few hundred feet away. As Naruto turned towards the Uzumaki army led by Nagato and Yato, hundreds of Uzumakis went through hand signs. Barrier, they yelled as they slammed their hand down. A large red barrier was formed between the enemy army and the ninjas. The dead clashed against it, but they were blown away as the barrier repelled them. Blowing their body apart, Nagato and his clansmen created hundreds of small holes that the ninjas used to stab their blades right through the enemy's head. Once again, Nagato and his clansmen channeled massive amount of chakra as the dead was repelled. Slowly but surely, with the barrier, they marched forward. Meanwhile, at the edge of the volcano, 9 figures stood, watching their army being pushed back for the first time. Their pale and stoic eyes were surprised. Their ninjas are rallying to the king. One of the men said. The lone female of the group narrowed her eyes towards the king. He reminded her of someone. Interest spawned. The pale-eyed members watched as the woman rose from her seat, her eyes showing nothing but slaughter. My queen, the man beside her said, as she turned towards him. Let us handle this, he requested. She looked towards him, and then turned 9 servants. As she gave a nod, but before they could leave, she went through hand sign. Summoning jutsu as she slammed her hand down. Meanwhile, something exploded outwards. The barrier was crushed. Hundreds of deads were blown away, as well as the ninja army. When the dust settled, Naruto was surprised as he saw the dead were retreating in haste. But something arrived, something more hideous. In front of him was now 9 warriors. All of them had pale hair and eyes that was as pale as the moon. They had spear weapons in their hand, as Naruto could feel the power in those weapons. But the thing that terrified him was the monstrous thing behind them. A monstrous humanoid statue that was tall as Kurama. On top of that statue was a man with long pale white hair and pale eyes. He had colorful markings above his eyebrows. No shred of emotion was on his face. The 9 warriors all spoke as one. There shall be no dawn for shinobis. The humanoid statue roared. Thousands of shinobis fell to their knees. The killing intent was so immense and consuming, many saw their worst nightmares flash in front of their eyes. Naruto himself was also brought to his knees, courtesy of the monster power. That thing. He knew what it was. The thing stopped roaring as a group of Akimiches transformed to their large size. As they moved towards the statue with their ferocious roar. No! Naruto yelled in horror. They were all focused on the statue. Shizue watched as the 9 warriors launched their spears. It pierced right through the Akimiches like they were nothing. It then started to suck their body. Their skin turned into bones. As they dropped towards the ground, reduced in size. Their bodies defouled, mutilated. The 9 pale-eyed warriors then made a hand sign. Arise. Naruto watched the Akimiches start to move. They started to get back to their feet, and this time their eyes had lost all of their light. What is this? Naru said in fear. The man on top of the statue pointed his hand towards the army. End your nuisance, the man said, as Naruto felt a buildup of chalk from the statue. But the Uzumakis felt it as well, as Ayato and the Uzumakis went through hand sign. As they finished their hand signs, a massive blue barrier rose around the statue. As the light inside was so bright, many had to shield their eyes. When the smoke cleared, the Uzumakis were stunned. The man was still on top of his head and the statue stood there tall. Dragons of death, the man whispered. From the mouth of the statue, dragons. They were purple, with dark eyes. The beast roared and charged towards the enemy. Thousands of ninjas jumped away. Naruto watched dozens of his ninjas got consumed by the roaring dragons. Instead of being burned, it tore away their souls, leaving behind their lifeless form. The entire ninja army trembled at that, as they did their best to avoid the inhuman foe. As Naruto snarled in fury as he raised his blade as he charged, a large portion of the army followed their leader, despite the raging dead around them, as they moved towards the statue. Their former Akimiches were the one that charged back at them, with the intent to butcher them. Naruto channeled chakra into dawn as the first Akimiche came down towards them. As he leaped, the hand came down and decimated the ground, as Naruto ran up the hand and sliced Dawn right into his enemy forehead. The Akimiche screamed in agony as the blade dissolved the seal over the Akimiche, and he collapsed, never to rise again. Takashi Itachi, along with Inuma Senju, brought down another Akimiche. Shisa would drive his ancestral blade fury right through the head of Akimiche, and it roared before collapsing. Fifth gate of opening, as Kagami released a powerful wave of chakra from his body. His skin turned red as a chakra consumed him. Within seconds, remaining Akimichis screamed as they were hit by super fast attacks all over their bodies. The last Akimichi was grabbed as Kagami threw him straight towards the statue. The humanoid statue ripped apart the Akimichi before it could crash down on him. As some of the forces got back their morale, seeing the power of the King Guards, the army of dead once again charged. Naruto gripped Don as he rushed towards him. Kagami eviscerated the front wave with his gates. As the two foes clashed, Naruto along with Ayato found themselves surrounded by the 9 pale-eye warriors. "Who are you?" Ayato said. "You're betters. You both are just lesser beings of greater suns." Ayato growled as he charged towards the nearest warrior, ignoring Naruto's command to stay back. As he slashed his blade, but the man stepped back, easily avoiding it. The man brought down his spear as Ayato brought his blade back up. Ayato watched as his blade shatter into pieces. Ayato blinked as he was impaled all over his body by 4 spears. As Naruto watched Uzumaki leader fall, "Now you die in your spawn," one of the 9 whispered. They all tossed their blades towards him. As Naruto twisted with Dawn, and he shattered all of their spears. Indra's blade. As Naruto saw the momentary shock on their face, he used that opportunity to release a bolt of lightning from his body. He saw Ayato moving towards him. While Ayato did something stupid, he was fast. Those pale eyes of theirs, it must be a dojutsu. His assumption was correct as they roared in agony, his lightning hitting them in their eyes. The first 2 didn't even see him coming as he sliced their heads clean off. He was about to move against the other 7, but a massive amount of lightning slammed right into him. Everyone watched in shock and despair as a massive amount of lightning slammed into their king. A beam that launched from the statue. Naruto was sent sailing away as he crashed into a stream of water as he lay there. As he coughed up blood, but he was still gripping onto his blade. His famous golden armor had melted. He heard footsteps. That hazy figure that stood on top of the statue was now walking towards him. The man gazed at him with cold eyes, a spear in his hand ready to strike. Naruto tried to swing his blade at him, but the man broke Naruto's wrist with one kick, knocking away Dawn. "Kimimaru Osusuke," the man said as he raised a spear. As Naruto heard whistling sounds, the man that was called Kimimaru jumped away. "If you touch him, I'll kill you," said Neri. Kimimaru narrowed his eyes towards a woman. There was no holding on to Dawn in her hands. The level of hate and anger in her eyes was amusing to see. Foolish woman. Raising his hand, he released dozens of bone shards from his palm that flew towards Neri. To his surprise, she released dark lightning from her palm that destroyed them. As Kimimaru rushed in, Neri barely had time to raise Dawn as he brought down his spear. She was nearly brought to her knees by the power of the man, but Dawn did not break, it held up. A clone of Neri emerged from behind the man, but before it could strike, it was impaled by several bones that came from the man's back. With his free hand, he delivered a devastating strike to her shoulder, sending her sail away. She lost all sensation in her hand. As he dropped to her side, she had to use her only hand holding up Dawn to block the strikes that he came towards her with. He was surprised that she was still holding up. But then, Kimimaru smirked. He launched several bone shards right towards Naruto. She rushed forward as she felt them pierce her body, as she blocked them right in front of Naruto. She dropped to her knees, coughing up blood. Kimimaru froze as he turned his head towards the wounded king. The king's eyes were dead set on him, with such hate that he had only seen in injured eyes before. The rage, the all-consuming flames of those eyes. The army froze as Kimimaru was set on fire with black flames. Kimimaru screamed in pain and agony as the black flames consumed him. His pale-eyed comrades rushed towards him and slapped a seal on him that stopped the flames, but his body was severely burned. As they dragged the unconscious Osusuke away, 3 of them got set in black flames as well. But unlike before, their comrades did not help them. They just dragged their commander away, leaving the others to burn. Tears of blood fell from Naruto's eyes as he crawled towards Neri. As he felt weak. As he felt his life fading away from him, but he had to get towards her. When he finally reached her, he saw her eyes were half closed. A smile came on her face as she reached up. As she placed her hand on his cheek, she wiped the tears of blood away from his eyes. As she opened her mouth, she struggled as he watched her. She struggled to talk. "Be happy. my son, she said. As the light in her eyes faded away, his heart shattered into a million pieces as he watched her die right in front of him. As he heard the screams of his men, it all seemed so distant. As he looked up to see the purple dragon as he rushed towards him and consume him. Time skip. 4 days later, Shisui Uchiha, captain of the once powerful King Guard, stood in the Uzumaki leader cellar, his eyes of a broken man in despair as he watches Mito Uzumaki try to save their king. They had watched a soul-stealing statue consume him. They had watched Nira sacrifice her life for him. But unlike the others, where their souls were removed, and they died instantly, the king, he was still breathing, but he was blank. There was nothing there. He was in a catatonic state. They lost Hiroshima. 10,000 ninjas died. Ayato, murdered. Nagito Uzumaki badly injured. Shin, Abermi, missing. The enemy legions were breaching Uzu, outer perimeters, and marching straight towards his last stronghold. On the island of Uzu, all that stood between them was a castle, and 3,000 fighters outside. For 4 days they fought. They held them at bay, for the Uzumakis to flee, but the ninjas had no more blood left to sacrifice. Watching their comrades' friends die before them and then came back with dead eyes that at them, it broke their morale, it broke their spirit. Watching their king fall crushed their hopes of victory. As the highest ranking officer, he could have ordered his force to abandon Uzu. Nearly 6,000 men of his own had died on Hiroshima from that monstrous statue. Another 4,000 had laid down their life as they were moving towards the final location when Hiroshima fell. Despite the chaos and death, he had managed to retrieve Neri's body, and he gave her a quick funeral. It was not worthy for someone like her to be given a funeral like that, but it was all that Shisui could do to make sure that she did not rise as one of them. Her ashes now contained in a jar at the king's bed. Every man able to fight is being mustered to fight, Inuma said, but that barely shook Shisui. He had failed to protect his king and his men, and now he was filled with despair. How much longer before the last civilians are evacuated? Asked Itachi. Another few hours, Inuma said. We don't have enough men to hold him off for so long, said Takashi. As they argue, as Inuma noticed the look in Shisui's eyes, as he looked towards Naruto. Who am I, Senju? Said Shisui. Our captain. The one who kept us together when all was lost. The one who chose to not abandon the Uzumakis. Never in his wildest dreams, Inuma would have said that he trusts Senju back in the past, but now. Do you trust me? To the death, said Inuma. As Shisui's eyes shifted towards the sky, the darkness that was coming, and the enemies marching towards them. Where were the dragons? Where were the roars? The era of ninja coming to an end. Young men, those that were inexperienced in battle, arming themselves. 2 swords were presented in front of him. The 2 ancient blades of the Uchiha, Fury and Dawn. As he took the blades, he looked towards Mito. No words were said, as Mito watched the boys arm themselves and got ready, as they marched to what was certainly their death. The last of the defense stood around the castle. There were some of them were warriors, civilians, merchants, inexperienced boys, old men. They were all armed, knowing that this would be their aim. Fear and despair gripped their heart, but the desire to save the ones that they love kept them standing here. Shisui stared at the lot. They had 3,000 against death. As they all looked towards Shisui, it couldn't be hope they were looking for because Shisui had none, but perhaps he could give them something else. Great enemies of past, Uchihas, Senjus, Uzumakis, Sarutobes, Nara. They all had to give up their grudge, because something that was worse than anything they ever fought before was now coming for them. We cannot stop them forever, said Hiruzen Sarutobe, the son of Sasuke Sarutobe, a little boy of 9. He was strong, he was able to fight his way through. Shisui knelt down to his height, as he placed a hand on his shoulder. I know. We should have never come here, Hiruzen said sadly, as he remembered watching 2 of his cousins died right in front of him. Maybe, but we are here now. It is true that we have lost so much, but every one of us that died here saved at least 3 lives. It's like the first war for dawn, little monkey. Darkness and danger had plagued the world back then. Our ancestors must felt what we were feeling right now. Even they doubted that light would ever come back in your life. Winter came for them just like it's coming for us, said Shisui. Then how did they win? Asked Hirsen. Shisui noticed that everyone is listening to their conversation. They never gave up. They kept on fighting even when all seemed lost. Even in the face of death, they kept on going no matter what. What are we holding on to, Captain? A young Senju asked. Shisui looked towards the ships, where the civilians were boarding. His man caught his gaze, as they grimly smiled, as they realized his meaning. We're fighting for something good. We're fighting for those who can't defend themselves. We're fighting for their tomorrow, so we give our today. It is a selfless act, something that the enemy will never understand. They cannot see despite all the misery. There's some good still left in this world, and this worth fighting for, said Shisui, as tears fell from Hirsen's eyes, as he saw the men around them, all of them steel themselves for the future, for the ones that they let live today. They will fight now. Fight, little monkey. Fight for spring, says Shisui. Moments later, the ground trembled as heavy snows fell from dark skies. The ground was quaking and cracking. Shisui saw the army marching towards them now that they didn't have anything stopping them from coming towards them. The ships had evacuated all of the civilians. Shisui wanted the king to be evacuated on the first ship, but Mito told him about his state that he couldn't be moved yet. But now, they had to. There was only one ship left for Shisui and his forces to board, if they survive. The fact that he only asked for one ship, given that he had 3,000 here, he already estimated how much of them would survive. Still, they were not hopeless. The Uzumakis had built their castle in the image of a monstrous fortress, surrounded by moats on all sides. It had traps all over. There was only one gate to enter, and it was heavily protected by Shisui forces. The keep that Mito was treating Naruto in was on the top floor, where there were several archers, all lined across the walls, trained ninjas that would rain hell upon any invaders. The castle walls were made up of strong stones that had seals engraved in them. It could resist ninjutsu and repel enemy forces. But it was still not enough. It wasn't enough. The cold only grew more colder, harsher and dangerous as they were trembling. This snow was not natural, Shisui knew. Those pale-eyed bastards were behind this phenomenon. Some of the men that were near the king during his fall muttered a name. Osusuke. Shisui did not know if they were actually descendants of Kaguya, but they were powerful and dangerous, and he was wary of them. The enemies was now visible. Shisui saw thousands of his own men and women marching at the front, their corpses being violated to attack their own friends and comrades. Behind them came more thousands of undead Uzumakis and warriors of Land of Lightning. Shisui then saw new warriors. They were in armor with white hair. As Shisui saw their numbers, there were at least 150,000 of them. Combine that with the remaining forces of the dead, there was 250,000 strong, while he only had 3,000. Never in the history of the elemental nation as such a monstrous army been seen before. Well, there's plenty for us all, said Takashi, as Shisui blinked at his words. He watched the fighters chuckle. Are those white-haired bastards out there? Here's an axe, as he wanted nothing more than to kill one of those monsters. It actually bumped him on his head. Become a little taller, midget, and probably will think about letting you fight one of them. He's right, little Saru. Leave those monsters to the grown-ups, said Takashi, as Hirsen scowled. Aren't you supposed to be with the king? They called you guys King Guard for a reason, said Hirsen, as he wanted to get back at one of those white-haired bastards who took his cousins. Our king wants us here, said Kagami seriously. The army roared as they were coming, as Shisui stepped forward as he raced on, as he saw the first enemy wave about to charge. Get ready, said Shisui, the sound of kunai, shurikens, and arrows being ready. The Legion of Dead was trapped in numerous barriers that rose up to protect the home of the Uzumakis. Hundreds were burned, vaporized, sliced apart, and thrown away. They charged once again as 4,000 of them died in the attack. Is that it? Is that all you can throw at us, you bastard? Mayame, Uzumaki said, wife of Nagato Uzumaki. With Nagato wounded, Ayato dead, Mito busy treating Naruto. Mayame was the last Uzumaki leader, and she was leading the army. The enemy army then parted as they stopped. Shisui was confused as he saw a woman. A beautiful woman, white hair, radiant skin, step forward. Her beauty was incredible. Shisui was mesmerized by her eyes. She raised her hand towards the barriers. Almighty. Push! The snow was blown away as a gravitational force, smashed against the barriers. Many young ones and civilians were sent sailing away. The ninjas were able to keep their footing because of the chakra as they watched as the barriers were annihilated. From the enemy army they chant, White Queen! Their enemy army and the abomination cheer. The woman raised her hand once again, but she had to dodge a spear that almost beheaded her. Her cold eyes narrowed towards Shisui, who glared back at her defiantly. Shisui felt his hands shaking. No, it wasn't his hands. Dawn and Fury, they were trembling as they started to glow. Dawn was rumored to be made by Indra himself with the chakra of 10 tails. Fury was said to be made by Indra, eldest son, and there was rumors that it had many of the tail beast chakra in it. The power in the blades compelled him as he brought both blades up in the air, as it released a monstrous wave of power into the heavens. As the enemy queen looked up, she jumped away. As the energy came back down, her forces on the other hand was obliterated. The woman screeched in rage as she saw thousands of her warriors reduced to ashes due to Dawn and Fury. Shisui felt a strange chakra pour through his body. One of them was wild and unforgiving. The other one was cold and ruthless. Indra and Indradal. He didn't know why those names were whispered in his head, but he felt the power flow through him. The woman moved back in her army lines as Shisui saw it before she fled, fear in her eyes. Prepare to fire, said Shisui as the army shot forward. The dead charged as they were being shredded and ripped apart by the traps. There was no emotion, nothing left inside of them, except for the feeling, the slaughter. As they came forward like wild animals, nothing was slowing them down, nothing was stopping them. They outrun the traps as they jumped into the moats, but the water sucked them inside. Shisui dropped his hand as hundreds of fireballs came raining down in the enemy forces, decimating thousands. They were burned alive. Shisui returned towards the upper levels. Namikaze! Fire! Hundreds of kunais, shurikens, arrows were raining down with explosive tags on them, shredding the forces. As Shisui saw a large amount of the enemy charge towards the main gate. Mayami, the gate, he said. Barrier team braced in Mayami. Majority of the Uzumakis were already dead. The few that were left, they were in charge of the barriers at the gate. Itachi, 100 already, said Takashi in a boast. 250, Itachi said calmly, as he kept on shredding them with dozens of kunais and shurikens. Smart ass, said Takashi, as Shisui chuckled at that. Shisui, as he was alerted by Kagami, dozens of earth pillars rose up from the earth. It was a clear manipulation of earth style. All of them had 2,000 warriors on it, as they were using them to scale the walls. As Shisui saw the pale-eyed bastards with their hands on the ground. Melee, said Shisui. The enemy did not expect this as Shisui watched as his friends leap as they slaughtered down the enemy forces, cutting them down from entering. Itachi and Kagami moved in as they were ruthless. As Shisui saw 100 more earth pillars rising with the enemies on top of it to breach the walls. As he brought the blades forward, he released devastating bolts of lightning from Dawn and Fury. All of the earth pillars were destroyed as the power in Dawn and Fury was too much, but they did not stop. They tried over and over again, but Shisui held the line. For the first time, hope was about to surge through the defenders until there was a roar. Shisui brought both blades forward and launched a massive attack as a monstrous statue launched its own attack. The two forces of nature collided with each other as everything in the area was white. Shisui coughed blood as he felt his chakra being absorbed at a rapid pace by the two ancestral blades. But that didn't matter as he watched. The enemy attack had been cancelled. The statue became irritated, it became angry. It charged forward, slaughtering thousands of its own forces, crushing over them as it moved. Many defenders abandoned their posts as they saw the monstrosity heading right towards them. Every attack they launched, it didn't do a damn thing as the beast got even more angrier and increased its pace. Inma gasped as he saw Shisui charge, as he hopped across the earthen pillars and rushed towards the humanoid monster. Three shadows flanked his sides as he tossed one of his holy blades towards one of his friends. Together the four king guards charged forward. Shisui raised dawn as Itachi raised fury. Takashi released a mountain of explosives as Kagami covered himself in the six gates. Sons of Indra, charge! The four kings guard clashed against the monstrous statue. A blinding light exploded on the darkened island, followed by an inhuman screech. Shisui and Itachi stabbed the blades into the beast's eye as Kagami slammed a brutal kick into his face. Takashi released a mountain of explosions right on the statue. Hirsno watched as the monster was sent sailing through the air. Its face cracked as it crashed several hundred feet away, crushing thousands of its own forces. Fire and blood shouted Shisui. They were not done yet. Dawn and Fury released a massive amount of chakra that tear apart the enemy forces that got in its way. As Kagami and Takashi started to butcher their forces, they didn't hesitate, they moved as they slaughter. Shisui and Itachi joined as they released a genjutsu, shrouding the entire field in more darkness. The dead screamed as they were killed by the hundreds. For the first time, the forces were panicking. It was then that the creature cracked some more, before it poofed away. The ninjas of dead ran. Fierce, thunderous cries of relief could be heard from the defenders as they watched the ninjas running. Their eyes narrowed down towards the four boys, who were covered in blood and guts. The only thing that was keeping them up was each other, as they were panting. Shisui grimly smiled as he watched the enemies run for their life. But then, that smile vanished as the ground trembled. A monstrous red-haired monkey and a menacing horse appeared in a poof of smoke. They had 4 and 5 tails respectively. As the two beasts stood there, their demonic eyes, the seals over their bodies, as they roared. "Tail beasts," said Takashi. "Now we know what happened to some of the fox's kin," said Itachi grimly. "What do we do?" said Kagami. They got their answer when Inuma and Mayami jumped from the castle walls, both of them flashing through hand signs. Summoning jutsu, 4 giant toads appear on the battlefield, dressed in battle armor, as Inuma stood on the tallest one. Mayami Uzumaki was sitting a dangerous crab summon. "Hop on," Inuma said. Shisui brought forth his own raven, and the other 3 climbed onto the toads. The twin-tailed beast started to form a massive Biju bomb. "Biju bombs! Brace yourself," Mayami said, as she flashed through hand sign, as she slammed her hands together. "Sealing art. Vanishing barrier," she said. A barrier appeared right in the center that absorbed the Biju bombs. She then flicked her wrist towards the Bijus. The barriers appeared right in front of the beasts, and the Biju bombs came out. The Biju bombs went off. Thousands of the warriors that were running were vaporized in seconds. The beasts screamed as they were blown back by their own attack. "Charge! Take them head on!" The summoning creatures and their riders charged towards the recovering tail beasts. Just when they were about to jump on tail beasts, a white flash happened. Shisui flinched as he watched the White Queen murder in her eyes. "Almighty push," she said. He barely managed to jump off his raven to avoid being hit by that invisible force. Unfortunately, his friends and comrades were not so lucky, as they were blown away. Shisui grunted as he crashed on the ground, as he heard his bones cracking. Regardless, he forced himself to his feet with dawn, as he saw himself facing off against the enemy queen. She released an inhuman amount of killing intent as he fell to his knees. As he saw death, despair, and suffering right in front of his eyes, he could not get back to his feet, he could not rise. Fear took over him, the urge to fall to his knees and give up. The queen walked towards him, a victorious look in her eyes, as she raised a bone-shaped spear, but it was blocked. She dodged as her throat was almost sliced open, as she looked towards Shisui, who forced himself back to his feet. "Why are you killing my people?" The woman was shocked. Very few could resist her power. For him, being able to stand, he had an iron will. As he attacked her, But she was mocking him, merely toying with him. He could feel it. Humanity was never my enemy. Shinobi's are, she said. Who are you? Asked Shisui. The one that holds the divine soul of the almighty goddess in herself. I am her vessel, and through me, she shall rule once more. Instead of a foolish king, you will have a queen. Shisui saw a monstrous amount of power spread across the sky. As he saw the demonic face spread across the sky, he had read about it once. In the ancient Uchiha scriptures, dark and beautiful, stronger than any being on this earth. Kaguya Osusuke looked down towards him, as Shisui felt like an insect being crushed. All shall love and fear her, the queen said. The sword in his hand raised as a beam exploded from it and blew away the image of Kaguya in the sky. The queen was launched back. As Shisui was barely holding on to the blade as he felt something grip his hand. As it was an image of an older Naruto standing there. The ethereal being glowed as his eyes were looking towards the white queen with nothing but rage. He raised his hand as a beam slammed into her. She was launched away. The army charged towards him, but he erupted in a massive blow that tore them to shreds, and he was gone. Thousands were slaughtered in that attack. The enemy queen was howling in pain and agony as she was being dragged away. Shisui's friends came around him. What was that? Said Takashi. Yes, Itachi said. Shisui always wondered why a strange phenomenon kept on happening around Naruto. The first being the incident when he became a King Slayer. Everyone inside had burned, and yet Naruto sat in the flames, and his skin did not burn. And the statue had sucked away everyone else's soul, and yet the king was hit by it, and he could not take his soul. Looking at Dawn, "My Lord Angel," said Shisui, "you have not abandoned your sons." But guys, be in subscribe right here. If you want to see the next person, do like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn on that bell notification stay posted. Remember, share to all of your friends in your social media platform. And also guys, go ahead and check out the brand new episode over in Anime King 2 of What If Naruto Was a Legendary Uchiha X Namikaze, and enjoy that guys. And over on Anime King 3, I post a brand new episode of What If Naruto Was Neglected with Justin sealed inside of him. So go ahead and enjoy that guys. And remember, if you're new and this is the first time you hear my voice, go ahead and click that red subscribe button and become part of the Anime King family. And thank you for all of your help and your support. And yeah, without further ado, I'm out for now. See you guys soon. Peace out.